Welcome, everyone. I'm Annette Insdorf, moderator of Real Pieces at the 92nd Street Y. Extremely honored to be here with the writer-director and the cast of Belfast. Many of us associate Kenneth Branagh with playing great British characters, make that a capital B, like Henry V in the film version that he directed, for which he received Oscar nominations as actor and director. He played Shakespeare himself in All Is True in 2018, as well as Laurence Olivier in My Week with Marilyn. But his autobiographical film Belfast acknowledges that his roots are in Northern Ireland, which he and his family left when he was 9 years old. He obviously did a superb job with the actors of Belfast, given its recent SAG nomination for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture. He is the director of 19 features that range from a low-budget indie such as A Midwinter's Tale, my personal favorite, to blockbusters like Thor, demonstrating an astonishing versatility. I'll give a brief introduction also for each actor before I pose some questions. Caitríona Balfe plays Ma in Belfast, for which she received a SAG nomination for Outstanding Performance by a Female Actor in a Supporting Role. And I first noticed her in Ford v. Ferrari as the feisty wife of Christian Bale. And for her role as Claire Randall in Outlander, she received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Performance by an actress in a drama television series. And welcome to Jamie Dornan, who plays Pa. He starred in the 50 Shades trilogy, as well as A Private War, My Dinner with Hervé, Wild Mountain Time. And I just saw Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. Very good comic performance. Jude Hill plays the lead role of Buddy. He hails from Northern Ireland, and Belfast marks his feature film debut, but I'm sure there will be more. Ciarán Hinds has been working steadily in films since Excalibur in 1981, notably in Steven Spielberg's Munich and Martin Scorsese's Silence. And on stage too, I remember when he played Big Daddy opposite Scarlett Johansson's Maggie in Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof back in 2013. So to begin with, Ken, you grew up in a Protestant family in 1969 Northern Ireland, a time when sectarian violence disrupted your happy childhood. Your film is obviously nourished by memories of those experiences, but especially given that Belfast won the Golden Globe for Best Screenplay, I'm curious whether much of the script changed during the shooting. To what extent did the actors reshape the people that you remember from 1969?
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Annette, for doing this. It's a great privilege and honor for us to be on this platform with you. All of these actors made a fantastic contribution to the finished film. The screenplay underwent quite a transformation. Originally, there was much more music in it, many more songs from the 60s, and a flirtation with a style that, if you like, aped the kind of thing that was pioneered on television by Dennis Potter. So characters would break into song and the actors would lip sync, and indeed, some of them did very brilliantly. Caitríona had the lion's share of that and was phenomenal at it, did wonderful things with various songs. But we realized, partly because of in editing, watching, and in the shooting, watching the performances blossom, it became clear that the kind of heart and soul that was at the center of the family story was what the film wanted to reveal. And that in order to not make that too busy, either stylistically with jumps into a more heightened sort of surreal quality, like the lip syncing might have done, or with too many different kind of songs, a single voice seemed to be what was required, and no one represents a kind of voice or sound of Belfast like Van Morrison. It had always been an option that Van might be the sole music provider with one or two exceptions, and we did ask him early on to be involved, and he was. But I think that the whole thing reformed itself with the work of my distinguished colleagues here in terms of the shape of the screenplay, and then individual scenes were much affected by They're little touches sometimes, but they're quite beautiful. There's a line Ciarán Hinds gives in the scene with him and Judy where she says to him, remonstrating about his inability to do what she says, repeatedly she says, "Do you hear me? Do you hear me?" And he says yes. And Ciarán just came back and said, "Sure, when did I not?" It's a very Belfast phrase. It's a very beautiful button on the scene. And it was Ciarán. In the scene before Buddy's very distressed moment of declaring that he does not want to go to England, I'd written it with the scene beginning on that pitch of emotion. And Jude, who's brilliant throughout, I thought could possibly benefit from the idea of playing the scene before that starts. I had not written it, and so I invited Katrina and Jamie to improvise it, which they did at some length and with great delicacy, in order to give Jude a run into this explosive scene. All of their improvised work is in the movie. So frankly, any prizes for screenplays will have to chop up into small pieces and everybody gets a bit.
I kind of felt that, and I know that as a director, you are more of the school of openness to actors. I'm going to ask your cast in a moment about that. I'm doing it alphabetically with Katrina Balfe. I noticed in the New York Times review this wonderful line where Jeanette Katsoulis writes, "While Belfast is in one sense a deeply personal coming-of-age tale, it's also a more universal story of displacement and detachment, located most powerfully in Balfe's fierce, shining performance," unquote. Could you talk a little about the preparation to play Kenneth Branagh's mother? Did you, for example, go through old photographs or letters, or was it more something that you allowed the script to give you?
Well, I think, primarily there was so much on the page, and I think when you get given a gift like the script that we were given, it's a very easy place to step into because you feel like so much is already there. And then, obviously talking about displacement and all of that, I think nearly every single one of us, bar Jude, are people who have ourselves left Ireland. So there is an understanding of that on a personal level. Even though it was much later on, my mother was sort of forced to leave her close-knit community and her sisters and her family to go towards the border because my father was stationed there during the 80s. So I understood also on another level what it cost my mom, and I had watched her sort of live that, and that was, I was able to bring that in. But I also, this period of Northern Ireland and the women of Northern Ireland of this time, it's so well documented, and we were, I was so lucky that I was able to, trawl through this wealth of video footage and interviews and firsthand testimonies of women from that time. And that was invaluable just in understanding their resilience and their humor and what they were going through and sort of the metal that they had within them. And I think that was one of the things that really stood out. The strength of women from Northern Ireland in particular was something that, I really wanted to try and capture.
Yeah, well, you did, plus a certain charm in addition to the strength, I would add. Now, both Jamie Dornan and Ciarán Hinds, I think you were both born in Belfast. And I'm wondering for each of you, was this film therefore a more personal experience than other movies you've been making recently? Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, God, for me, yeah. It's not every day that you get sent a script that is titled the town that you were born, bred, and buttered in. I've been lucky so far in my career where I've played characters from Belfast, but that's never been the sort of central theme of the story, or the main focus being the place. So this was just unique in its sort of the way it was presented, and an opportunity to, which I feel is really important, to show Belfast off in a different light. And for the last 20 years I've been very lucky and traveled around the world a lot, and I have seen the whole gamut of reactions when you tell people you're from Belfast. It's fascinating watching people when you tell them you're from that place, because everyone's got a very different understanding of what that place is and who the people are and what went on there. So and it's not always an ignorance on people's part. It's often just what they've been fed. And when you look at the news reports from a 30-year conflict, you can't blame people for thinking that it's all doom and gloom over there. And I'm forever trying to explain to people that it's a bright and beautiful place filled with laughter and filled with hope. And I think with this film, that argument's much easier now going forward, because you get to see how certainly the origins of conflict affected normal, hardworking, innocent people. And we've seen it. Stories based on the conflict and the troubles that are through a very political lens or paramilitary lens, and and they have their place and they're important and necessary. But I think this is particularly necessary to tell this story, so people have a better understanding of the people, the everyday people that were affected by goings on there. And I'm so proud to be a part of that.
Great. And for Kieran Hines?
Yeah, I don't think it really, in my experience and the work I've done, I don't think anything has been as personal as this. When Ken sent the script, it brought me back, actually, having left Belfast in 1973. So I was there. I understood what 1969 was about. I was about 16. I was at grammar school in Belfast, not far from where Ken lives. We lived quite close, and it all came back. It never goes away, but it's placed in another part of you while you go out into life and you do your work. And in our work, we're taken into many different places, different centuries, different cultures. And this particular piece, when Ken sent it, just in reading it, suddenly became, I don't know, apart from having a few hackles raise themselves in the back of my neck, I suddenly was transported back in time, back to a time probably more for me kicking into the early 50s and into the early 60s, when I would have been Ken's age, and all the memories of that, of grandparents, of my own parents, how my mother was quite stylish, actually, compared to my father, and then seeing my grandparents, my own grandparents, opposed to Ken's, and how they lived in kind of a similar fashion, even though we came from either side of the religious divide. And somebody mentioned to me when we opened the film in Belfast, I think parts of my family who had come, suddenly they said to me, I don't know, but you suddenly morphed into a mixture of our father and our grandfather. And I guess it doesn't come any more personal than that, invaded by the spirits of your own family. And I have to say, just to be there and to be doing it with Katrina and Jamie and this extraordinary young gift to us all, Jude Hill, and with Dame Judy, these are gifts that sometimes come along in your life. You have to work, and you do the work, and you put your whole heart and soul into it. But actually, the truth of it, from Ken, it became a gift to us all, and we are very, very connected through it.
By the way, it's also, in a different sense, a gift to all of us. I mean, to the viewers who have been responding with such emotional warmth to this film, partly because, as Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, the more something is deep down and personal inside you, the more universal it can become, if there's a way to express that so that everyone can link into it. But now let me move over to that gift that you mentioned, Jude Hill. I know, Jude, that this was, you're acting with people who've had a lot of experience, but I think a lot of us want to know, how did you get involved? How did you end up playing the young Kenneth Branagh? Did you show up at an audition? I mean, tell us a little about it.
Well, this was maybe a few months after the first lockdown happened, and we were all stuck in our house, nothing to do, and a self-tape got sent through, and it was labeled Belfast. And hearing that name, and just something clicked inside of me. And whenever I read the test script, I just knew it was perfect. So I put in all the work, and I put in all of those hours and days. And the first self-tape I sent, the next day or so, I got an email back saying that they wanted me to do a callback on Zoom. And I did maybe about 5 or 6 of those over the course of maybe a month. And the last sort of audition thing I did was in real life with Ken. And I'm pretty sure that's the first time that I've ever met him. And he sat me down and he talked me through it all. And we went over the scenes, and it just felt so natural and it felt perfect. And yeah, that day, I'll never forget that day.
And I see that you are doing more acting. I read that in the upcoming TV series Magpie Murders, starring the great Leslie Manville, you're in 4 episodes. So has Belfast set you on the path to what you hope is a career in acting?
Well, yeah, I think all the popularity and the film is getting is definitely getting my name out there. And it's weird because even like around where I live, people know my name that I don't even know them. But I'm just really, really lucky, to be honest. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Ken.
Yeah, I think that's true for everyone in this group. So Ken, this cinematic memoir, it's not a home movie, but it is a movie about home. And I think it can be likened to other great films like Fellini's Amarcord, Cuarón's Roma, John Borman's Hope and Glory, Louis Malle's Goodbye Children, and I think my own favorite, Truffaut's 400 Blows, which all evoke the childhood of the filmmaker. Have these films been important to you? Were you thinking of any of them either unconsciously or consciously in approaching Belfast?
Of all of those, incredible roll call. It's a great, to even be mentioned in the same breath. It's obviously it's quite a bit overwhelming, really. But the truth is that of all of those, and I don't. I'm being absolutely honest when I say I've not seen Alfonso Cuarón's Roma because, as it was coming out a few years ago, I felt in my bones that this film was on the brew. So I didn't want to go and frankly be intimidated by a master filmmaker making a film about their childhood. I wanted to so I still haven't seen it, but I will, of course. But of the ones you mentioned, the film that very much in feel inspired this is Louis Malle's film Au revoir les enfants, for a vulnerability that I think everybody on this Zoom call was able to provide in their performance. So I think that's, it seems to me that in that film, the tenderness, the heartbreak, the sort of the exposure, the sense that I was watching young people, it seemed in such a sort of naked way. They were so open. The story was so open. It was a story of tremendous and deep heartbreak, of course, by the end. But it seemed so searingly honest and simple, not simplistic, but simple, that very, very hard thing to do in art. And it had this vulnerability. And I knew that it would be, as it has been, a vulnerable making process. However, whatever way it was constructed, it was going to be something that involved me removing a few layers of skin, if you like. And in a way, the performance of it was going to require the same thing. So I would say that it's films and the performances of the young people particularly, but also generally in film, I'm always struck by those actors and performers who can genuinely reveal, genuinely peel layers away and be, in a way, without indulgence and without sort of it being some sort of bizarre sort of therapy. They can allow you to witness their fear. I was frankly frightened making this film. I was frightened of what it would do to me, and I was and in a way it required the performances to be unafraid, to be fearful. So that would begin with the working method. Every single one of these actors in a test day, as I called it, came on and started immediately. They were immediately the characters, partly because I totally trusted them. I trusted their appetite for the parts and everything. But I remember Jude and Jamie, first day doing a scene, in theory simple. They walk down a field, they're going on their way to school, and Jude asks the relatively simple question, are we going to have to leave Belfast, Dad? It lands in the middle of the film in a way that is very, very resonant, because it's at a point in the movie when a lot of things have been going on. And the reaction that Jamie gives is, I would say, is a combination of things. It's somebody who's ready to do a scene like that on day one, even though it's not comfortable, but I was capturing something that he chose to allow me to film, which was his rawness or vulnerability about such a moment. Both had an instinct that the moment was as important as it was, even though in a first day, you think, can I do something silly? Can I do something where I'm just walking in the background and it'll just drop into the movie and you'll never notice? Don't make me do the important close-up on day one. But in fact, like the process of making the film itself, which for me was like just sort of opening my chest and going, well, here it is. I kind of invited them to join in that process of going, we might all be opening a few veins here, but in the end, it'll probably be good. It'll probably be good for us if other people recognize moments in their own lives when they might have done the same thing. So the tone in performance of Au revoir les enfants, and then the way in which this group went with that sort of, I would say, honest exposure of their interior lives was a beautiful part of the process for me.
And by the way, you are reminding me of something, because I last saw you in person at the Telluride Film Festival back in September. Goodbye Children, Au revoir les enfants, had its world premiere at the Telluride Film Festival quite a few years ago. And I so vividly remember the way that Louis Malle was emotionally so shaken by the incredibly warm response. People just standing ovation over and over. And he was like, it was the first time an audience had seen it, and he didn't know how it would land. And when he felt the response in Telluride, that was the beginning of a beautiful development of a film into the world. So I'm going to ask the actors, each of you, how does Ken's experience as an actor make him a more understanding or accessible director? For example, how did he prepare you for how to enter the roles? What did he do to engender that sort of trust? Maybe we'll do it alphabetically again, if you don't mind, Katrina.
Well, I think Ken, being an actor, he has such an innate understanding of how fear can be the worst thing an actor can ever have. So he, in his incredibly intelligent, clever ways, he did a series of things that just eased us into things. We, on our first day, and this is the most invaluable thing that, for me especially, he had Jamie, Judy, Kieran, and myself sit in a room with Ken, and he just had us speak about our lives, and he would pose questions about our childhood, about our parents, about our grandparents. And I think it was this lovely way of getting us to that point in ourselves of remembering things about our childhood, remembering things about our experiences, to infuse our performances with it, without it being a kind of direct direction, where you would be like, oh God, I have to summon up this now. It was just this really lovely easing into getting us into a place in our memory, I suppose, and to sort of bring that. And also for me, walking into a room with all these incredible actors, I was definitely incredibly intimidated. And very quickly, it sort of brought us all to this lovely personal level and got us to know each other at a very intimate level very quickly, which was just, invaluable in sort of forming this very familial bond very early on. And that carried on throughout. I think Ken just has a really gentle approach and real patience with his direction. And, he would just always very, never make us feel like we did anything wrong, and just gently suggest new things. And it was a lovely, beautiful experience. I think we all felt incredibly trusted and incredibly supported throughout this.
Thank you. Jamie, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd probably just say the exact same thing that Katrina said. But, for me, this job is impossible to do without trust, without a feeling of confidence. And you can acquire confidence from different places, I guess. But if you're not getting it from the person in charge, it's really, really difficult. I think I've experienced that. I'm sure we've all experienced that on some level. So I've never felt more imbued with confidence or trust, right from this beginning, right from the first time Ken and I spoke on Zoom. Like Jude said, I believe that was the first time I met Ken. But it was that instant, instant sort of level of trust was inserted then, like right from the beginning. That being told that for whatever crazy reason Ken could maybe answer that I was the only person he wanted to play this role. I mean, even just from hearing that as an actor, I don't know. For me, I need that. I need to feel that like I'm meant to be there, and we were all made to feel that the whole way through this shoot, and it's totally invaluable that. And I thank Ken, and I will always thank Ken for trusting me and for trusting us to tell this story that's so important to him.
And Jude, for you, you weren't used to perhaps rehearsals and things like that. What did Ken do, and was there a lot of rehearsal to help you get into that part?
Well, I'd say there was about a week of rehearsals where we all just sat on a round table and just went over the scenes that we'd be doing the next week. And that was very nice of Ken because it helped us get to know each other, all the different cast members. And we did a lot of improvisations as well in the rehearsal things, just improvising different scenes and improvising different scenarios, if you'd say. And the thing I liked about how Ken directed us is he put a lot of trust into us and a lot of freeness. And he told me that just put a lot of yourself into the character rather than playing a full-on version of Buddy. Mix it all up, put a bit of yourself into the scenes. But I feel like that was very nice of Ken to put that in there, and that helped strengthen the trust between all of us together.
Great. And for Kieran Hines, and I'm actually going to make it a little more particular. In a moment, I'm going to talk about the use of long takes. So you're in a lot of them where it's beautiful long takes where interactions develop within the frame. Was that something that you would add to what Ken brings to directing actors?
I guess so, but one is never sure. I mean, just to go back to what Jamie said about that idea of a director engendering trust in people to be able to open up, and because we are fearful, but actually to open up, to actually place those away and to open up into the work that we're being asked to do. And I mean, nominally, of course, Ken is a director and writer, but I don't know. I experienced him more as this gentle guide of someone who knew what he wanted deeply to share, and that we just needed to be gently nudged or thought, not directed, not told, or just maybe hints, suggestions, but so delicately. And so we'd all have to pay attention, because if you don't, you might lose a little gem. But I was also deeply moved with how he worked with Jude. I mean, to watch a master like Ken work with a young, inexperienced boy doing his first job, it was remarkable. The strength he gave him, never mind us, to actually say, so you weren't sure, this was just two people chatting and something would happen whenever the camera started to roll. It was very educative in a way for me to see how people connect and how they actually, where the time is placed in a beneficial way. to those who work. I'm sorry, I digressed a little, but to talk about the long takes.
Not at all. It's good.
Well, I guess the rule is you keep going till somebody says cut, and if you can't keep going, you better make it up as you go along, because you never know what comes in handy. You just don't. But at the same time, I did note that I don't remember us doing a lot of individual shots or singles. I'm sure we did some, but the idea of playing a scene in the camera, whether accommodating the whole scene, but by that, then this comes from, of course, a director who's able to get three people in a scene to literally play together like a piece of music and play that little piece of the rhythm or the tune out, rather than take, I need a snippet there, a snippet there. And it's his choice. I think I remember there was one scene we did, I don't think Katrina wasn't there. I don't know. She was probably doing some ironing inside somewhere, but we were doing the shopping. There was me and Judy and Jude and Jamie, and we were just walking down the back, what we call a back entry, which is an alleyway. And as I remember, we did it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And it was thrilling, because yeah, we just say, let's just do it again. And not like particularly point out if somebody's tripped up or whatever, let's just do it again. And then he thought, yeah, that seems to be it. Let's do it again. And we kept on just playing this until in the end, I can't remember. I'm sure it was in the mid-teens of takes we did, because I think he really wanted to get it all in one of the four people. And it could, at any one time, one of us might have been slightly out of sync. But I do remember it being, rather than going, oh, do we have to do it again? Or it was absolutely a joyous thing, I think because of the company I was keeping at the time, I have to say.
I completely understand what you're saying. And my students at Columbia University are probably tired of hearing me talk in class about the nobility of long takes. I mean, I happen to love when the camera is inclusive, when it allows tensions and moments that might not have been anticipated to kind of inhere within the frame. And I remember in Belfast, there are long takes with such rich mise en scène, like Buddy sits in an outhouse on the left, Pop is in the middle, Grandma's on the far right at the window. And it just keeps moving among them, the scene. And in a later shot indoors, she's in the background on the right behind the window, while Buddy and Pop are horizontally included. So for Ken, does your preference for long takes that include characters, does it stem partly from your theater background, or is it more from cinematic inspirations like, let's say, Jean Renoir or Orson Welles?
Well, both. I mean, you always look to the masters and to the classics, I think, and see, you know, how did they get things right? Why did they do that? And what were the techniques? But I think it also comes from an interest in the you know, what Kieran was talking about, the sort of the generosity. The film is about trying to find where that existed in a time when it was hard to access, you know, and so somehow embodying that in the way subtly the audience intuit the performances, I think does come out if you put people together. So the take that Kieran was talking about, I can with accuracy tell you that it was 26 takes. It really was. But you know, the one, I mean, she would laugh about wanting to go home early or whatever, but you know, the one, and I said about after take 18, I think we used take 14 by the by, but about after take 18, I said, well, what do you reckon, folks? Because sometimes it was to do with trying to get timings, etc. But also sometimes I wanted everybody to be good you know, so I didn't want anybody walking away thinking, oh Christ, they're going to use the one where I wasn't so good, you know. But the one, I remember the boys, Kieran and Jamie, I reckon, and Jude were ready to give, you know, ready for a cup of tea at that stage. I don't mean because they sort of had enough and didn't care anymore, but there was a look between the three boys of, well, you know, we think we've probably got it now. And it was Judy, 85-year-old Judi Dench, who said, I think you caught her eye, Jamie, and because she realized that you three possibly did want a break. And then I think you said, I think we should do it again. And Judy immediately said, yes, we should. And so She was very aware, as they all were, that there is a bit of magic you're looking for. Actors to sort of, to use a sports analogy, to pass the ball between each other. And in those instances, you're hoping for, this sort of cliche sounding thing. You're looking for a happening. You're looking for a surprise thing. And in the take we used, the surprise was Jude said the line about, "You've done an awful lot of jobs, Pop," with a twinkle in his eye that he hadn't used in exactly the same way in other takes. That was tip top. He moved out of the way of Judy, so he didn't mask her. Kieran just went half a step to his right, so he also didn't mask either Jude or Judy, who then turned just on the line. And Jamie came in right on cue, but with feeling about "My mother's worried about you." And Kieran did "Your mother's worried about you." And the rhythm of it was all in one. And when you see all that, it's a sort of thing of beauty. It also, I like it being in, yes, I've got a frame, and yes, of course, I can say various things, but I like them having the control. I'm happy that I didn't want to have 4 close-ups. I didn't want to be behind them. I wanted to see it happen in the frame. And the example of this that I think is particularly telling in the film, and it also involves a generosity and an acceptance in the part of the actors, is the curious reality of, in the scene following Jude's distressed moment of saying, I don't want to leave Belfast, we then have after that a complex scene where Jamie brings up the idea that maybe it's not just a question of the problems of him, the boy's attitude to leaving Belfast, maybe it's about their own relationship. And this scene plays as a 4-shot with the camera low down at the front of the room. And he won't mind me telling you this, Jude, who played a blinder in the scene earlier on in the morning, was exhausted. And we said, "You've got to sleep in this scene." And well, sure enough, method actor, he did indeed fall asleep. So when we then did the scene, which had Lewis playing his brother behind, and then Katrina and Jamie in the background, we've got a 4-shot, the camera never moves. Out of focus with his chocolate ringed lips in the front is Jude, if I may say so. Please forgive me, Jude, for sharing this with the world. Snoring slightly, if I'm perfectly honest, but quite Denise Yard said we can deal with it. And then Katrina and Jamie played the scene with the reality that a pair of parents might have of just don't wake the kid. Don't wake the kid who we upset earlier, who's had too much chocolate, etc. So that scene and the direction of that scene was played hushed because we literally didn't want to wake up Jude, who eventually, when we finished the scene, we had to get Shawnee and his mum to come in and wake him so he wouldn't get the hump with us or suddenly wake up thinking what's going on. And to finish that off, sorry to go on about it, but Jamie and I had a discussion about, well, will there be coverage in this scene? And I said, well, I don't think there will. The scene it really does play so powerfully in the 4-shot, and it plays so powerfully for everybody. And as distant and as you might think small in the back of frame you might be, in fact, it's somehow more, at least to my eye, more beautiful and more moving for our sort of overhearing, almost like an audience who also have to be quiet because we don't want to wake him up either. And we are listening very keenly to this intimate, possibly marriage-ending conversation. So in that case, the single take with marvelous actors was a gift to the film.
Wow, that is such an illuminating description of why Belfast has a nomination for an ensemble cast. I mean, you can have a lot of great actors who do individually superb work in a motion picture, but what you do when you're in the shot that you're describing, allowing us to feel the emotional vibrations among characters within the frame, that really does provide the intimacy that you're talking about. I do want to ask a question first of the actors, because you started the 7-week shoot in the summer of 2020, and because of COVID, could not use real locations. I read that you built the streets and interiors of 1969 Belfast on a parking lot in Hampshire, about an hour from London. But I'm curious how the pandemic affected the making of the film, especially for the actors. Katrina, could we start with you?
Yeah, in a strange way, I think, we were all so grateful to be given a job at this point, I think, to get out of our apartments or houses that we've been stuck in, but also this really special job. That there was a real, I mean, the gratitude and the openness, and I think the sort of excitement we had when we all got there, you know, it was palpable. And it's strange because even though we were all masked up, we didn't get to do the usual things like go for dinners or hang out in that sort of social setting where you would normally do a lot of your getting to know each other. I think we were forced to make that extra personal effort to connect with each other, and it sort of it solidified things quicker in a way. You know, yes, we were getting tested every morning. We were sort of in our bubbles. You know, I was at the hotel with Jude and Lewis and Lara and their moms, and you know, it was, I don't know, in a strange way, I think it just added this extra, I don't know, this extra layer of this is, you know, how lucky we are that we get to do what we're doing in this particular moment. You know, I think we were probably only the second production that were up and running in the UK at the time. And I think we all just felt really, really lucky and grateful.
Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to add on anything that hasn't been covered there by Katrina. Well, it did feel like it had this extra kind of almost responsibility or something, that we were lucky that we were getting to shoot this in these times and with such amazing people and creative talents around us, that that we maybe embraced it even more than we would have. I don't, you know, obviously you're going to embrace a film like this with the likes of Ken behind it, but it was such a unique and unsettling time that we were all in. And then, as Katrina said, we were given this gift, and I guess there's a sense of wanting to make the most out of this and make this as great an experience as you possibly could. And it wasn't like a normal job. There were strange protocols, you know, and until Telluride, I'd never seen Ken's face. You know, I've obviously seen it before. I wasn't like, who's this guy? He's talking to me, very familiar. But you know, there is a distance that you would imagine that creates with between the cast, who were usually unmasked, obviously when we were on set, and the crew, who were always masked. But again, there was some sort of magical camaraderie that was formed. I think for collective fear of everything that was going on around the world, and here we are, we're able to still come together, do our jobs that we love, that we need. And I think we all realized, having a few months off, not able to do anything, how much we need the work. So it's a very special bond that was created as a result of that.
Yeah, I see. Jude, anything to add to that?
Well, this is my first film, so all of this was, well, not really new to me because this is my first film, but I think that, as Katrina said, we weren't allowed to like go out to dinner with each other, but we were all in the same hotel. And I think that meant something, that we were all grateful to see each other, which made us maybe like connect a bit quicker. And I don't think like wearing the masks all the time or doing the daily COVID tests every single day really impacted the actual film. It was just a sad little thing, and everyone took off their masks right before the call to action, and these amazing people were straight into character. So yeah, that didn't really affect the experience of the film.
Thank you. And Kieran?
Yeah, I think there's something about also the way Ken, I think, has got a great relationship with time. And time is a slippery concept to me, but I just know about using time in a work environment, about using it in the really best way you can, and not to waste it. Not to waste it, but to use it. But that doesn't mean that you have to, you know, go around pointing at watches and panicking about it. It's actually a fantastic use of time. So we were just aware of that, about how to use our time. And then when we had those moments together, we benefited from using that small time we had together in a kind of quite a deep and profound way, almost immediately, without wasting time and pussyfooting around how you behave in a way. We used that time that we were given, and I think that aided the sense of us reaching out to each other so that we could be able to connect as a family.
That's great. Actually, it's even, in a sense, the film is about time. It's a memory piece. It reminds me of a beautiful line that Jean Cocteau once said: "A child's eyes register fast. Later, he develops the film." And, the time is interwoven throughout the film. Ken, I'm sure you know that Belfast is one of a few recently released films in black and white. And your monochrome palette, of course, has a different tone from The Tragedy of Macbeth or Come On, or Passing. I love so much when the family goes to the theater for A Christmas Carol, the audience is in black and white, while Grand's glasses reflect the color on stage. So could you talk a little about whether you chose this palette partly because you're watching the films as a child was a black and white experience on TV, or were there other reasons?
It was prompted partly by that. That's where I saw classic Westerns, and which had a big impact on me, and classic films generally, which may well have been originally developed in color. I would have seen The Wizard of Oz in black and white to begin with, for sure. For me, there was a kind of wonderful gray, granity monotone in the visual of Belfast. I remember it raining a lot, and I remember the dominance of great big pieces of architecture, whether it was the city hall or the cranes in the shipyard. There was a kind of a sort of steely grayness, a kind of masculinity, a place that said, we built the Titanic, and it's sort of, there was that dynamic, the gray in the center, the blue of the water, and the green of the cave hill behind. There was a big sort of elemental quality to Belfast, but it was felt very graphic, and graphic shapes in black and white are wonderful ways to describe that, and you get a kind of texture available to you and an immediate sense of what you talk about there, memory, if you like. It immediately sends us back into some sense of period. So it was a combination of the beauties that it could provide, particularly in what Haris Zamboulukos did with his use of the available light to create this kind of silky liquid black and white. And when I look at the film sometimes, and especially in Dolby Vision, which is a particularly beautiful way to see it, you really feel some frames, given that it's a film set in Ireland, that look like a pint of Guinness, a really fantastic pint of Guinness, which is something you may know people take very seriously, the way they pour their Guinness in back home. And that in itself had a sort of, kind of a non-literal but important element. But it also allowed for the great rush of color when we go to the cinema and when we go to the theater. Basically, everywhere we meet art, color reigns. That was the sort of instinct. Art that could take you out anyway, take you out into the world.
Yeah. A question for Jamie. Given the film's focus on generations, when we were at the Telluride Film Festival together, I was very sorry to learn that your father died of COVID last year. And you mentioned that you based a lot of your character in Belfast on him. So I'm going to ask you this question first, and then maybe extend it to Jude and Katrina. Has your mother seen Belfast, and how did she react?
I've got further sad. I lost my mum when I was 16.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't realize that. So
listen, so no, it's obviously the answer. My family have. We had this incredible night on the 4th of November where we screened Belfast at the opening night of the Belfast Film Festival at the Waterfront Hall, and I want that to be the last time I actually ever watched the movie, actually, because it was just such a particularly special night. And having been a part of many great screenings from Telluride going forward, nothing will top that experience there. I had both my sisters with me, had my auntie, my dad's sister, 3 or 4 of my best friends, and some other very close people in my life, and I feel that, well, my dad was the most positive man truly anyone could ever meet. So, I mean, he was very positive about some terrible movies I've been in. So I can't even imagine like what his response would have been to something that has been so far so loved. But the experience of watching it with my sisters and my auntie was incredible. And these are all people who are also from Belfast, and it means so much to them that a story like this has been told in such sort of graceful light. And I'd be forever thankful to that. And I know in some way that my dad will have experienced that as well in some kind of way that I'll never understand.
And Katrina?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to be able to bring my mum to that screening in Belfast, which was the first time my mum's ever come to a premiere. And she, you know, my mum, the first thing she said to me when I saw her was, "Oh, I just wish it wouldn't have ended." For a woman who has probably fallen asleep through every other thing I've ever done, that was the biggest compliment. You know, my mum was one of those Irish women who can fall asleep holding a cup of tea and never spill a drop. No, she loved it, and you know, I owe a debt of gratitude to her, because there's so much of her, I think, influence on me, and me watching her and the kind of strong mother that she was. You know, I was able to put a lot of that into Ma, and it just felt right that she was able to be there and to watch it and to enjoy it as much as she did.
And Jude, the experience of your parents coming with you to see the film?
Well, my mum was on set with us and she was my chaperone. So she got that exclusive view. But yeah, my mum and dad, they're just very, very proud of me and supportive. And they never stop supporting me. And I owe a lot to them. And Belfast and London and all the different premieres were the first time that I've seen Belfast on a big screen, and it made it 10 times more emotional, and I cried at a million different parts. It was just so surreal seeing my own face up on something as big as that. And yeah, my mum and dad, they're just really, really supportive of me.
They have every reason to be, and thank you to them. For Kieran, instead of asking you this, I have a question about whether you could compare working with Ken Branagh to other directors like Spielberg, Catherine Bigelow, Scorsese, Todd Solondz. I'm thinking of some of your superlative work, including Life During Wartime from 2009. I will never forget the scene of your character, recently released from prison, meeting Charlotte Rampling in a hotel bar. Is there any sort of shared characteristic among the directors with whom you've worked, or does Ken bring something completely special, different?
I would say that everybody, because they're all the ones you mentioned, are extraordinary, the gifted individuals, that everyone brings their own soul and their own rationale and their own integrity to whatever they're doing. Completely, and they're following the story that they've worked on and prepared that they want to do. All the people that you mentioned are fantastic directors. They're brilliant. Sometimes I wonder, what the hell am I doing here? But the thing is, what they all have in common is a generosity of spirit, of allowing someone else to go to work in the way they will, and how they handle it, as we know them in the business as directors. We direct. These people that you mentioned don't, in a way. They obviously are in control of the material and they've got to do it, but what they do is they open up and they have really amazing eyes to see and pick up and ears to hear, and they use what they can with the material and the human beings they have in front of them to mold gently what in the direction that they want to go. That's what I would say. And they're all extraordinarily gifted people, and I feel very blessed to be in the company.
Yeah, there are some more I've seen you in at least 15 films, and some of them I've been very moved by. Rodrigo Garcia's Last Days of the Desert, where you play the father. my former student, Kimberly Pierce, stopped loss. I mean, I could go on, but I know that we have only about 2 minutes left. I guess, I hope, Ken, you don't mind. I know your mother, Frances, died in 2004. Your father, William, died in 2006. And when you were a child, they took you to the movies, which was a gift. Christine, if you could just show the photo. I took a photograph from the book of your parents, because I feel that this film is such a love letter to them. I just want to say that you have returned the gift by putting a beautiful image of them on screen in Belfast. And basically, I realize that we're at the end of time. I have so many more questions and so many more compliments that I would like to offer you, but I will end by admitting two things. First of all, I was stopped by a neighbor in my Manhattan apartment building last week, and he said, see, he stopped me because he loves to ask me about movies. Have you seen Belfast? And I said, yes, it's my favorite film of the year. And he goes, me too. And he goes, you know why? And I said, why? He goes, it made me think of Fiddler on the Roof. Now, I initially cracked up, and then I realized that my neighbor had a kernel of truth, that it goes part way to explaining why Belfast is having the effect internationally that it is. It enables every human being to find some kernel of childhood, of loss, of displacement, and of love. And I just want to thank all of you for your artistry and your vision in making Belfast and bringing it to our world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.